3,
2.
1.
Welcome to episode 86,
86.
the Degenerates Clubhouse. And we actually went out and did something yesterday.
Was it yesterday or was it Friday?
Friday.
Today's Sunday.
I just time traveled from Friday to today, so
Yeah.
it seems like it's the same to me.
Got it.
Yeah, we went to a regional MMA promotion called Legacy Fighting Alliance,
Mm-hmm.
and it was being hosted at the University of Denver, and we got free tickets.
Aaron, explain to the degenerates listening how we got said free tickets.
You want the long version or the sort of long version?
It's our podcast. Do whatever you want. Do it. If it's a long version, do the long version.
The sort of long version was I had a MMA based Instagram account which gained tens of thousands of followers,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just kind of randomly making fight posters and stuff for fighters that the UFC wasn't promoting. And then when the UFC got bought by William Morris Endeavors, they actually started doing better in promotion, and I got tired of dealing with UFC fans because I've gotten legit death threats for some of the content I put out because UFC fans are fucking insane.
Yeah.
But so I hadn't posted anything for a long time, and about what was it, 7 months ago, 6 months or not 8 months ago, something like that. I just made a poster for a local, Colorado fighter that was going to fight an LFA. Posted it on my channel, or my feed rather, and then a week later, I get a DM saying, "Call me. We might have a work for you." And I'm like, "What the fuck is this?" And I look. I'm like, "Oh, this is the president of LFA. Slide into the DMs."
Mm-hmm.
And I called him, and basically what they wanted me to do was just a lot of graphic design busy work. So, because I guess their sort of head graphic designer is getting really behind on stuff. So all the sort of annoying, repetitive stuff that he doesn't want to do, that's what I get to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I also get free tickets. And I think I was the only person in the entire arena that wasn't taking pictures of the fights or the cage. I was taking pictures of the sort of scrolling marquee because I'm like, I did that graphic. That was me. I did it. And I was very, very concerned on whether things were spelled incorrectly on that because I copied and pasted, and I felt like somehow I still might have spelled something incorrectly because I was doing those graphics two days before, and then there that one long ribbon above where the concession stands were.
Mm-hmm.
That they they emailed the day of the event oh, we forgot to tell you we need graphics for this too. So I was doing that all the day of the event. Nobody spell checked or proofread that at all. So I was just, every time I glance over, I'm like, God, I hope there isn't, the person's name and then a bunch of random characters. But nobody was paying attention to any of that except for me. So that was the highlight of the event for me. What about you?
Well, I was gonna say, so you I would say maybe a month ago you're like, hey, LFA's coming to Denver. Would you want to go if they gave us either discounted or free tickets? And I was like, either way, I was like, I want to see any live MMA, and here in Colorado, I'm willing to go to, whether it's UFC, LFA, smaller circuits, whatever. Watching live MMA, I'm all about. Even I'd be down to go check out a jiu-jitsu tournament or wrestling tournament.
Smoker in someone's backyard.
Sure, I don't give a fuck. And so when you said, hey, if I got discounted or free tickets, so we will go, I'm willing to pay full price. Turned out Aaron was like, holy shit, they hooked us up with these awesome seats.
Mm-hmm.
And he showed me the floor plan. I'm like, oh, from the floor plan it looks like okay, they're good seats, but they're not cage side. So I'm kind of thinking okay, they're gonna be floor seats, awesome, great, no big deal. We get there, we sit down, we're literally at on the aisle as the fighters are walking down to the cage. So anyone watching LFA live on Friday night probably saw you and me as the fighters were walking down. That's how close we were to
Who was it that you high-fived after they won?
the Trey Waters.
That was a good win too.
Yeah, yeah.
He was a Florida man.
He was a Florida man.
Florida man with the late KO for local Denver fighter.
So LFA made it a point to make. I think there was a local guy or a Colorado guy on each fight.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them from like Elevation, Factory X, a couple other gyms. One guy with Dwayne Ludwig's camp. Seats were awesome. I forgot what you told me what those tickets values were, but I would have paid that. Like I would have paid that price if you said, "Hey, I can get us these tickets for $200. You want to go to this event?" I'm like, "Yeah, hell yeah!" Especially no, like we didn't know until we got there how close those seats were, um, and then like down the same aisle from us, you noticed another MMA athlete that you had helped do some
I had done
graphics for.
I had done a poster for her for one of her Invicta fights
Mm-hmm.
before I did the LFA poster that got me hired. And so I'm sure Invicta, you're probably listening too, guys.
Hook a brother up.
I'll do. The funny thing is, Invicta actually has really good fight posters.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I would add too much to their repertoire, but yeah, no, I said hello. I was like,
What's funny is Aaron was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go say hello to," and I couldn't really hear the name. He's like, "I'm gonna go say," or maybe it was when you came back. You're like, "Oh, I talked to da 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 da," and I didn't exactly hear the name, but I assumed because in the general area where you were coming from, you had walked right by Lauren Murphy and Miranda Maverick, who are both UFC fighters, and I was like, "Oh, I thought Aaron meant to talk like he was talking to one of them." Turns out he was talking to this former Invicta fighter, which is kind of funny that he just happened to walk by.
well, I was very, very focused on trying to like keep my neck in one
Yeah,
position,
yeah.
like not like. So I wasn't really looking around when we were in our seats, and I only noticed it was Claire Guthrie, who's on this current season of The Ultimate Fighter, which is just a terrible, outdated UFC reality show, basically.
Yeah.
But she's on it, and I noticed her because she and her boyfriend were sitting on like the very end.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was coming, I'd gone up to the like upper deck to go use the bathroom. So I saw her when I was coming back down because they were right in front of me. But I guess Lauren Murphy and who's the other one you said?
Miranda Maverick.
They were obscured by Claire Guthrie's boyfriend's giant head.
He did have a pretty big head.
And he was calling out cornering advice.
Was he?
Yeah, that was him. There was because the one fighter who got KO'd by Florida Man was, I think, a teammate of hers. So he was.
Is he a fighter?
I don't know. I don't know what he is.
Does he train?
I think he definitely trains.
Oh, okay. It'd be kind of weird. It'd be kind of weird to be like a casual, like a non-MMA guy, right? Like someone that doesn't train.
No, he definitely trains, but his cornering advice was a little bit weird, where he was just like, stay in the clinch, and it's like, I guess, all right.
Yeah.
There's some stuff where it was very, very vague, but it was fun that we were close enough where you could call out cornering advice.
Oh, they could hear.
They could hear us.
It was like as close as we were. It was like I guess the same kind of level of intimacy you would get like in the Apex, the UFC Apex, where like you could hear everyone that was close enough to the ring could hear what they were saying.
Although there were way, way more people and it got way louder.
Toward the end, yeah, for sure.
I mean that was the other thing for me, which was interesting. I had not been in that arena since 1999 during my recruiting trip, because I told you, I think, on the way over, when I was looking at colleges, the three I'd narrowed it down to were UMass, which has had a D1 lacrosse program, University of Denver, which also had a D1 lacrosse program, and Whittier. Which one's not like the other? And I remember on my recruiting trip, like the first place they took me was Red Rocks, and they're like, "Look, it's an amphitheater." I was like, "Oh,
that's
right."
cool.
And I do remember walking to the bottom of it and then running to the top as fast as I could and being incredibly out of breath.
Oh, dude, it's hard.
Well, because I hadn't acclimated at all. I was right from the East Coast, and then they took me on of course, as an athlete, on a full tour of that facility. I mean, it's like a really large athletics facility that's got I'm trying to remember the highlights. This was 1999.
Big ass. Well,
There's an Olympic-sized swimming pool where like the length of the pool could change depending on the event. Like it had some sort of like movable back wall.
mhm.
They're very proud of that. There's a huge ass rock climbing wall in their student workout facility, which at the having been in Denver now, I'm like, oh, whatever. There's a rock climbing wall. There's rock climbing walls in the 7-Elevens, like big deal. But at the time, I was like, oh my god, there's a rock climbing wall. That's cool. And yeah, I still remember that hockey arena because I think it seats like 6,500 people, something like that.
Yeah.
Between 6,000 and 7,000. And I'd say there was probably at least 3,000 plus there.
Yeah. It wasn't completely filled. Yeah, I'd say generously it was like half filled at least.
It's a lot of people though when you think about it.
Yeah.
So
Again,
it was a cool venue. I liked it.
it was a cool venue. I guess it was. I don't know if you want to call it an advantage or disadvantage, but I didn't know any of the fighters that were fighting. Like I'd never heard of any of these guys. A lot of them were 0-0 or 0-1, 1-0, that kind, like up and coming or just guys that are turning from amateur to pro, making their pro debut. So
It's fun seeing people get their first pro fight though.
Yeah. Because you get to see these guys at their, I guess, the rawest when they think they're ready to fight, when they think they're ready to make the big stage.
There's one kid who got his pro debut named Frankie Sanchez Jr.
Yeah, I took a video of him as he was walking down.
And you could tell exactly where his mom was in the crowd.
He looks like he was 16 years old.
Oh, he's so young. I mean, at the time we were like, oh, there's a 14-year-old fighting. That's a little.
And then we looked. I think he said he was 18, but still, he's a kid. Like he looks like a little kid, and going up and against, like, it was funny because the guy he was fighting was like he had like a full beard. He's maybe a little bit of hair, like losing a little bit of hairline receding. So I was like, oh shit, this 18-year-old kid's gonna fight this old man or older man. A guy, I'd say
he was younger than both of us, but yeah.
Yeah. No, the guy looked like he was in his late 30s.
He was. I think he was mid 30s, but just a little rough living.
But and yeah, dude, this kid just put it on. Well, it was a good fight. And the first round was a good fight, and then it kind of.
I mean, it's a fight that if we were watching that on television, we'd been like, oh my god, they're both terrible. But getting to see it live, it just is a whole different vibe. I mean, there were a lot of kind of rookie mistakes that Frankie was making, but it's like that's the one thing though that I remember even from wrestling, and I think we were talking about that with the main event as well. It's like I think for some of those guys, like particularly like you got the bright lights on you, you're in this big venue. A lot of what goes out the window. Like I guarantee Frank, that kid, and probably the fighter in the main event look way more polished when they're just in the gym working and everything. But you kind of revert back to what's comfortable.
Yeah.
When the lights are on, so to speak. So
we saw a lot of high profile people there. We saw Neil Magny corner, I think, 2 different fighters.
Saw Brandon Royval.
Dwayne,
my old training partner, not really.
Dwayne Ludwig with one fighter that I recall. What was the guy's name from Factory X? He said Mark.
Oh, the head coach was cornering all the Factory X fighters. Mark Montoya.
There you go. That guy, I've seen that guy a number of times in UFC fights. I just never knew his name. We saw Lauren Murphy, Miranda Maverick, like we mentioned before.
Well, you did it.
I saw, and then also I there was a guy in the audience I had. It's like, I know this guy. I've seen this guy in the UFC, and I just couldn't put his name. I couldn't figure out his name. It turns out he was a former Ultimate Fighter guy. I forget what season it was, but his name was Gilbert Smith. The black dude wore his glasses. And I'm sure there was other like either former or current fighters that were recognizable. We didn't walk the entire the arena. So
the great thing that I'm realizing though is so I think LFA has a comp section.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime that somebody's going to get comped, they're going to get put where we're sitting.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, I'm assuming Lauren Murphy and Miranda Maverick and Claire Guthrie and all that, they probably were all comped. Yeah. So if we just can keep sitting in the comp section, we're going to be by any of the the fighters that show up,
Yeah.
in an unofficial capacity.
It was the the weird the weirdest thing the weirdest part for me was that the event started at 5:30 on a Friday, so like I had to put in a full day of work, and it was like
Yeah, it was early, huh?
yeah, it was kind of early, and then it started early and it ended at like 11 o'clock ish, give or take. So it was like a full it was 12 cards, 12 fights, 13 fights.
13.
And then,
Supposed to be 14.
yeah, I think there was a couple that got scratched. There was one that was a strawweight fight that never happened that got scratched, and
I know, because they had me do so much promotional material
for the girls.
because, yeah, I got an email saying, like, we don't have anything for Jasmine Montoya. She's a star, all caps, star in Denver. Like, let's get something out. Because we didn't have a photo for her opponent. And, like, I was trying to, like, search social media and Google and everything to see if I could find an image of that girl. And I couldn't find anything usable, but I saw one photo of I forget her opponent's name, like trying to stand in an athletic stance, like in like a square off, and I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be a round one squash match.
Yeah. It kind of felt like that, especially in the prelims, that like the local guy was like the local guy was clearly better than their opponent. Like it was like feeding the local guys kind of thing.
100%. I mean, which is smart and good business, and that is kind of what you should be doing anyway.
It changed up a little bit though for the main card, like the 6-fight main card. Like it was a little more evenly matched on those main card fights.
Well, the main and co-main were not won by local fighters.
Yeah.
Like we said, I mean, the Florida man fighter was losing, and he was like, what was he? He was like 170, and he was like 6'11".
Yeah, he stood as tall as Neil Magny.
And yeah, he was going against a wrestler, and then just kneed him in the head when the guy was standing straight up.
The wrestler, I forget the wrestler's name, Spencer
Ben Bennett.
Bennett. He kept repeating the same kind of like what was working was like, oh, press him up against the cage. No real setup to a grapple position.
Well, especially as he got tired, because like, man, when you get tired, you just go right back to what you're comfortable with.
And even that guy Trey Waters was like, he'd get pinned up against the fence, and he was like looking at the referee like, what do you want me to do? Like, well, your job is to get away from that. Your job is not to let him do that. So he got like to the point where it was like like it was predictable, and that's when Trey was like, oh, I'm 6'19" tall. I'm just gonna pick my knee up real quickly and like just flash Kato, kneed him in the face as the guy was coming in for a takedown attempt, and caught a knee in the face and got knocked out. It was like, yep, come from behind, win.
And then in the main event, there was a Brazilian fighter
who missed weight,
but I think, was it maybe like 10 or 15 seconds into the fight, I turned to you, I'm like, oh, he's really good.
Oh yeah, you did. You said that, and then quickly after that, I was like, oh, wait a minute, this guy's he's outmatched. He's not gonna outclass this. Like we knew very early on before the fight even like managed. Some guys take a while to kind of like settle in, kind of like find their timing and that kind of thing. You knew right away that Stack, who was the local guy, was like, I thought he was outclassed, and it wasn't a weight thing. That even though his opponent, the Brazilian guy, came in 5 pounds over the weight limit, it was the second time he had missed weight in consecutive fights. So I was like, he could have been champion, even though he won. He wasn't crowned the champ. But that all that aside, the skill set was like, oh yeah, this guy, the Brazilian guy, is like way better than Stack. Stack's got nothing for him.
So I guess in summation, regional MMA is actually kind of fun to watch in a different way, because at this point with UFC, like if it's just not like a really top tier fight, I don't care. But getting to see people at all different levels of progression is fun. Being that physically close to the action just adds a whole new element. And there's just kind of a mixed bag where you're like, you don't know what the fuck's gonna happen, right? Like at the highest level, sometimes it becomes a little bit predictable. And those fights, it was like, who knows what you're gonna get.
Yeah. Outside of the fight spectacle, like the tables immediately surrounding the event were all, I imagine they were all like tables that the people, like the higher level sponsors like 9mm and Brothers Barbecue and a couple other sponsors, like they were given tables to seat, I guess, friends and family, cage side, and immediately in front of us was like I guess I don't know if they were executives, at least maybe the owners of Brothers Barbecue, and they were like throwing out like barbecue sandwiches to the audience. It was kind of a weird promotion, but and then I imagine some of their employees were like sitting right in front of us, like Spanish speaking dudes that were strictly Spanish speakers. I'm like, oh yeah, you guys are probably like the executive chefs for some of their restaurants, is what I imagined.
Oh,
And they were like eating the food, and then like I would see them like passing around a little vape pen. These guys are just fucking getting stoned like right next to their owners. It's kind of funny.
And there was one table with just a completely obese gentleman wearing a like fluorescent t-shirt with cut off sleeves, and like when I was coming down from using the bathroom, I saw this guy just like shoveling pulled pork into his mouth.
Easily 500 pounds, maybe 600 pounds, I would say. I don't know if you saw this, maybe you did or didn't, but I think that guy was sitting because he had only one leg. Like he had, from like the knee down on one side, he had no leg.
The diabetes got him.
No. My guess, I don't know this, is that he may be a disabled veteran, because they were promoting the Wounded Warrior Project was another sponsor. So my guess is that this guy was like a guest of Wounded Warrior. So that's my guess. Aaron, you could be right. The guy could have lost it to the Beatus. Who knows? One or the other. Either he's a wounded vet that lost his leg in service, or you just ate too many chicken wings.
Well, it's funny. Now I'm trying to find out how much those VIP tables cost, because if I had if I had refinished the LFA president's kitchen like floor, we could have had one of those VIP tables all to ourselves.
It's such a weird barter. Like, hey, can you finish my floor and I'll hook you up with a VIP table? If you had this the technical know-how, I mean you do, but I'm saying like if you were like, hey Armando,
I just don't want. I have the technical know-how. I'm not 100% confident that I wouldn't fuck it up, because I haven't done that many times.
I was gonna say if you were like, hey Mondo, do you want to help me with some labor work for cage side table, VIP table? I'd be like, hell fucking yeah. I would have gotten on my carpentry clothes and just said, let's go fucking do this shit. Gotten some free. The tickets we got, those still were fucking awesome. I had zero complaints. Again, I would have paid for those seats knowing that we were sitting right there. It was like fuck. It was a cool experience. Never sat that close to any MMA or boxing or whatever event. Gilbert Melendez, we got to see him doing a little.
He was there
chatting. He's one of the commentators.
I want to be the in cage interviewer, because I just realized it's the easiest job ever. All you go in and you write, so that was a really tough fight. You had some difficult moments. Yeah. How are you feeling right now?
Yeah.
That's all you have to do. You just go in there and you're like, how are you feeling? And then you just let them talk.
There's kind of like a simple 5 or 6 questions you can ask that are pretty universal, and they kind of get recycled over and over and over again. Every now and again you sprinkle in a little thing, but no, all in all, good event. I had a good time.
Yeah, and there's another one in Vail coming up in September.
And I hope we go.
Yeah, well, I think so, because there was a Vail card around the same time last year, but I was like brand new. I had just started working for them.
You want to ask?
No, not at all. But yeah, it was to the point this time. Like the president of the company like texted me like, "Hey, do you want comp tickets?" And I'd already emailed the lady that takes care of that, but I was like, "Oh, that's fucking cool." And then little did I know the reason why he wanted to reach out, because like, by the way, I need you to do all this fucking shit right now for these graphics. But it was fun. That was a good time.
I hope it was a small price to pay for the. I thought I had a good time. It was a good event. I only had 2 beers. If it had been a Saturday and I had to work Saturday, so I didn't want to get sloshy. But if I had to like not work the next morning, I would have fully gotten hammered.
Well, and if you had to pick in terms of the fight, if there was like one like knockout of the whole night, what would it be for you?
Trey Waters. I like that. That one I just like to come from behind.
You liked it when the Florida man got to come from behind?
Yeah.
Wow. You walked. I set that up. You walked right into it. There's another Florida man that likes to come from behind.
Yep.
And sometimes from the front.
Yep.
Mondo, what do we have in this week in Florida man?
Florida man. Woman performing oral sex on driver causes vehicle to crash into FedEx truck, officials say. Fort Lauderdale, Florida. 2 people inside an SUV were discovered naked after a crash between the vehicle and a FedEx truck Thursday evening, and it's what was going on inside that may have caused a collision, according to officials. At the time of the crash...
So real quick, they crashed into a FedEx truck.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of truck would have been the funniest if they crashed into? Because I feel like UPS, if it had been a brown truck, it would have been a little bit funnier.
I was gonna say like a hearse, like carrying a dead body or something. That would have been like fucked up, but that would have been kind of funny.
Oh, so they crash into a funeral?
Yeah.
Oh my God, do they survive the funeral crash? Or is it like super murdered? They're like,
they
you know
die
what?
and they're like,
two
fuck
for
it.
one.
You're already halfway into the
Wow.
back of the hearse. Let's just throw you in there.
You just took that to a super dark place. Okay, so what actually happened?
At the time of the crash, the woman inside the SUV was performing oral sex on the male driver, according to Fort Lauderdale Fire Rescue, who responded to the scene. The crash happened in North Ocean Boulevard, blah, 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 blah. There were 2 people inside the FedEx truck, but their injuries were minor. The driver of the SUV sustained injuries to his private area due to what was going on at the time of the crash, according to FLFR. It's unclear whether anyone will be charged in the crash.
I mean, look, if she did not bite down full force, she deserves a sainthood.
I know.
If somehow how could you not? Like, that's your natural reaction, right? Like,
Yeah.
you clench your teeth. So, I mean,
I got a couple questions for you.
okay.
Number 1, have you ever
No.
seen
Seen?
someone getting roadhead?
No.
Okay, I have. It was kind of funny. I was in San Diego with a coworker of mine, and we were just driving from customer to customer, and he looked, because I'm driving, I'm focused on the road. He looks over, and he notices like a woman's head resting on dude's crotch while the dude was driving, and he's like, Mondo, look, roadhead. I'm like, what? I look over, and I'm like, oh, yeah,
Yes.
she is giving him roadhead. I think that's fucking awesome. 5 stars for her. Good for you, sir. You found yourself wife material?
Actually, in a little bit of a callback. Remember, I told you one of the schools I was looking at was UMass.
Uh-huh.
This was the dumbest idea ever. But in the fall, like I knew I didn't have that much time to take recruiting trips. So I decided I was going to go from what was it? I was going to go from my home in Pennsylvania to visit this little college called Wheaton that I knew I wasn't going to go to, but the coach was really nice and kept asking me to come. And I was like, all right, I'll come for a visit. And I went from Wheaton, and then I visited UMass, and then I visited Colgate, which was like the richest, preppiest school I've ever seen in my life. And then went back home. And I'm not going to lie, I went in the middle of the week at UMass, which was weird. I remember they were like, who comes in the middle of the week? Like, what are you doing? but I met like a really hot college girl.
Ooh.
And then, my little 18-year-old self, like I'd had no masturbation time because I was staying in all these dorm rooms. So I'm like driving from UMass to Colgate thinking about that hot college girl. And that was my first and only road wank.
You did a road wank
I did a road wank.
while you were driving?
Yeah.
Wow, that's fucking crazy. I've never done that.
Not just driving. Driving a stick shift.
Shit. So
I was driving 2 stick shifts.
Oh man, that's talent. I've never like had the like,
It's not safe.
Yeah.
It's definitely not safe.
And definitely not driving. I don't know how to drive stick, but even just manual, I wouldn't like.
No, it was a bad idea.
I don't know.
I did not crash. There was definitely an added element of excitement as like cars would pass. Like, well.
So hold on, I gotta ask you. When you came to a stop sign, did you like stop stroking, and then when it went go, did you continue stroking? Did you do that?
That would have been fun. No, I was on the highway.
Ah.
I would have really. I
obey traffic signs. Like 30 miles per hour, you slow down. You hit the highway at 65. You're like,
I think I could have done it seamlessly because I'm a lefty, and you do the stick shift, the automotive stick shift with your right. So I just had to do a little
with your knee.
knee steering, which it would have been a tricky balancing act, but yeah, that was the one and only time. I don't recommend it.
Wow.
But and I don't remember I don't remember how the climax of that was,
Oh shit.
but it was not nearly as bad as the climax for our Florida man and woman. So how did this whole thing end?
There are no windshield wipers on the inside of the main
Oh,
windshield.
that was the end of the story.
That
So
was the
it's
end
just unclear.
Yeah. It was my second question that I had. Have you ever received roadhead?
No, like I said, that was the closest.
Ah.
That was the closest I was ever to roadhead. I don't think I'd want to for that very reason.
I would. I was dating a gal when I was in Whittier, and I had like a class, one of my business classes. Like we had like a field trip thing to an art museum, and on the way to the museum, you're driving from Whittier to the museum, and it's like an hour and a half drive from there, and you know, my girlfriend at the time like went with me to this class trip thing, and she's on the phone with her friend, has her on speakerphone, and her friend's like, "Hey, you should give him roadhead," and she looks at me like giggling at me, "Ha ha ha, roadhead,"
and you're like, "No, really."
I was like, "Your friend's fucking cool. Like, yeah, you should listen to her." I would want to be a dick, but I would have fully accepted Road Beach if she had offered, but sadly I didn't press the issue, and that was the end of that. And that was the end of Florida Man. Moving on to the world of Ask Reddit. Reddit question number 1, sir.
Mm-hmm.
What's the weirdest reason you were stopped by TSA? Let me go first because I don't really have a good answer. I know you have a better answer.
Yeah.
My answer is I've never really been stopped by TSA, but I have been given.
Your skin's not quite.
Yeah, it's
enough.
like if it was if it was any darker, my beard was a little thicker, a little more fuller, and if I wore a turban, I might get pulled over, stopped. But none of that happened. One time though, I did get flagged. Like they had me moved to the side and like, "Sir, do you have another?" Because I had one. You know, during this whole COVID thing, we have to wear fucking stupid face coverings when we get on the plane. And the face covering I had two. I had like a neck gaiter, and I also had a mask that had like a little filter accessory thing on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently they don't want you to wear those filter accessory ones, as they don't count those as valid whatever masks. So
they're good for keeping you from contracting it, but if like you were COVID positive and you breathed out, it just goes right out the filter.
Whatever. Anyways, but I happen to have another one of them fucking blue like hospital ones. So that's the only time that I've ever been like kind of flagged at the airport for anything really.
How many times have you flown?
A lot. I mean, not a ton, but I mean, when I worked for yeah, it's all been like work related stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was flying to Chicago. I've done that like I think 2 or 3 different occasions, flying to Chicago and back. I've flown to Texas and back a number of times there. Yeah, no, I mean, I've it's all been intra U.S. It's never been out of the States, but I've flown quite a bit.
Oh, mine was also intra U.S., so to speak. This happened when I was in college, and you know, as I think you know, like we've had to fly usually twice a year, sometimes 3 when we made the playoffs for lacrosse. And those flights were always like butt crack early in the morning because they were just trying to get the cheapest fares possible. So they were usually at like 5:30, 6 in the morning. And then to get a whole team from Whittier to the airport, checked in and actually on the plane by the time it was leaving. I mean, we would get up at like 2:30, 3 in the morning to leave.
Stupid early.
Oh, ridiculously early. So I'm in line, going through security, just exhausted, barely awake. Pause that thought. Flash back to the previous summer, and I was at a outdoor flea market called Zern's in Pennsylvania, actually with our mutual friend and acquaintance Tori.
Mm-hmm.
He took me out there, and like Zern's is like, if there was like a flea market like post-apocalypse, that would basically just look like Zerns. Just these like tightly cramped stalls with things in like weird bundles, and there's smells where you're like, is that food? Is that body odor? I can't really tell. I mean, it was a strange place, and for some reason, 18-year-old me was like, I need a huge ass pocket knife. I mean, because I still am, but it was even more of just like a kind of teenage boy mentality of like, oh, I want a cool knife, and they had these huge ones that literally they could have just come off the set of like Predator.
Yeah.
And when I was packing up to go to California, I'd always drive, and for some reason I stuck it in this like heavy leather jacket that I had, but never had any cause to wear in California because it was never cold enough. And this trip with the lacrosse team was the first time where I'm like, oh, it's gonna be really cold. I'll bring my leather jacket, and stupid me at like 2:30 in the morning grabs it. It was heavy enough where I didn't feel the extra weight of the pocket knife, so I'm just going through security with with this jacket, and I just stick it through, like the X-ray machine, not aware of anything. And here's the other interesting fact, Mondo. This was like February 2001. So this was TSA, but TSA had just been formed in November of 2000 because we were only months away from 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it's not only that this is TSA, this is like TSA in like high alert. And I'm going through security. My jacket goes to the X-ray machine, and all of a sudden there's all this commotion, and like all these like TSA people are like rushing over, and like one of them just like forcibly like yanks me out of line, and now I'm like over kind of in the corner, and there's like 4 or 5 of them like surrounding me, and my team is just filing through one by one, like looking over at me like, oh no, what the fuck did Jaffe do? And the head of LAX security comes over. He's like, son, do you know what you are and are not allowed to bring on an airplane? And I was like, can't bring a weapon of any kind? And he's like, yes. What would you call this? And he just pulls out, like, dramatic reveal, pulls the pocket knife. It wasn't even really a pocket knife. It was like a hunting knife out of the leather jacket. I'm just like, oh fuck. like I see like I'm never gonna make it back to Whittier. I'm gonna end up in TSA jail for the rest of my life. Like, and I'm like I'm frantically trying to explain like, no, like I'm part of this team, and the East Coast, and I haven't worn that jacket since it was cold, and like it's not really making any sense. And he just turns to one of my teammates who's walking by, and this was actually like another kid from Pennsylvania. I don't know if you ever met him. His name is Brian, like tall, blonde-haired kid.
Maybe.
And I don't want to say anything disparaging about Brian, but when the head of security is like, "Do you know him?" He just like takes one look without missing a beat, goes no, and just keeps walking like, you motherfucker. And we were not friends after that.
Yeah, but you're white, so you got away with it. They probably
exactly like. The adrenaline levels rose to enough where I like actually woke up, and I'm telling him like no, like really, I'm so sorry. I hadn't worn that jacket. He kind of gets it. Like he sees like, oh yeah, you've got the same matching bag as the rest of them. Like, okay, this is just a fucking idiot. He's not a terrorist.
Yeah.
And exactly, they did let me go. Yeah, if Mondo, if it was you, I don't know if
no, hell no, I would have been incarcerated for sure, 100%.
And the quick epilogue to that story was years later when Brian broke up with his girlfriend and I briefly dated her. I didn't feel bad one bit. I was like, you had this coming, Brian. You tried to get me thrown in TSA jail.
Some of the answers from Redditors. User character Succotash5 writes, when the Andrew Garfield Spider-Mans first came out, they did some amazing merch for them. My stepdad is a huge Spidey fan, so I picked him up the corniest Spider-Man film merch when in the U.S. One of those big like whirling cement truck things. It was a big Tonka size thing, and the only bag it would fit in was my carry-on. They stopped me and said, "Is this a Spider-Man toy?" And I took it out and showed them. They said it was the best thing they'd seen all day.
Okay.
All right. A big Spider-Man truck. That was a longer explanation than necessary, you fucking dumb. User Pample Mouse writes, I had a nutcracker in my carry-on, like a legit festive Christmas soldier nutcracker. It was a gift for my mom's birthday. She collects them. I was only flying in for 2 days for my grandma's funeral, so I didn't check any luggage. They stopped me and questioned me for 30 minutes, kept insinuating I was going to use it as a weapon.
Hey, you know who else had a nutcracker? That Florida man in the last story. Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these guys all like to write long ass responses to the call. The last one I'll read. User Aelsar, Aelsar writes, glass jellyfish. Like those blown glass ones that are super cool at art galleries. I got pulled aside into a small room because they thought I was smuggling sea life. Was an interesting time. All right. That was it for Reddit question number uno.
Wow. That would be, I mean, okay, here's a side question real quick. What's the worst thing you've ever smuggled on an airplane?
Worst thing I've ever smuggled in an airplane. I haven't done anything risky in an airplane that I can think of. I once thought about like taking weed, but like I was like, nah, I don't want to get caught.
I did.
Yeah?
Yep. Took weed.
How'd you do it? Intentionally or unintentionally?
No, completely intentionally.
Oh.
It was because I like there were people on the East Coast that had like smoked me out when I was in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to reciprocate. And I had weed I'd been given by a Whittier College football player in exchange for doing one of his art projects, and I was like, yeah, I'll take this back. I mean, at this point, I've already evaded TSA with a hunting knife and not gone to jail. So I'm like, I'm bulletproof. They can't touch me.
Yeah.
And I just like those like big tubes of like M&Ms. Like I like took the M&Ms out and I put the weed at the bottom and then put the M&Ms back over the top.
I'm too much of a puss to try to get like shit behind like security. I remember once, again, this was also post 9/11. We were at the Stratosphere in Las Vegas, and we were trying to go up the tower thingy so we can do the tour and the roller coasters and all the bullshit that's on top of the tower.
Mm-hmm.
But again, post 9/11, they were even very, very cautious about like checking for metals and doing the wand and all that bullshit. And not knowing it, I almost always carry a pocket knife in my pocket, like almost always. And we were just walking around Vegas like nothing. And then when they were like, "Hey, we're gonna go up this tower," I'm like, "Okay, cool." We were waiting in line. I'm like, "Oh shit!" And then that's when I realized I have this fucking knife on me. They're gonna catch me, and I'm not supposed to have a. So what I did is I went to like a restroom in the Stratosphere.
Put it up your butt.
No,
Oh.
I was very. That would have been fucking worth. All to go up and ride some fucking roller coaster, right?
Worth it.
Yeah. No, I very sneakily opened up one of like the toilet paper dispenser fucking thingies, opened up the like lid to it, put the knife in there, closed the lid back up, and then went about my way, did the whole roller coaster, blah 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 thing. Came back down, and later that evening I went back and got my knife. It was nice.
What would you have done if you went back down and it was gone, and there's just like blood all over the floor?
Yeah, well, if there's blood all over the floor, I'm like, holy shit, there's probably my fingerprints on that fucking knife. But no, I'm too much of a sissy to like try to get away with some stuff like that.
All right.
Reddit question number 2. College graduates of Reddit. What happened to that friend that never stopped partying?
You know what? I will let you take this one and chime in occasionally.
No. I want you to go. I want you because we might have different answers.
No, you go first.
We might have different answers, dude.
Well, because here's the thing. I haven't kept in touch with any of our college friends nearly as closely as you have.
God. I don't know. I think we probably have at least 3 friends in our mutual circle that like maybe they don't party as hard as when we were still students, but they still partied pretty hard. Like they didn't graduate and been like, okay, I'm done with this. Let's move on. Let's kind of grow up. It took them a little bit longer to grow out of that. Not to say that I'm Mr. Mature guy. I still get drunk too. Like I have fun too. I'm not gonna lie. But a couple, I'm just gonna put initials because if they listen, I don't want them to feel bad. But there's AE.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's EL.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's maybe not surprising to you, but surprising to me, FM.
Okay.
Do you know who those initials are? The last one.
No, I'm not sure.
He's,
yeah.
he's in your
Yeah,
lineage.
yeah, yeah. Okay,
Okay,
okay.
okay.
I wasn't thinking about it.
Yeah, it was really weird. Like after we had graduated, going and hanging out with these guys, and they still, I forget there's someone's bachelor party or something along the lines, and they all want to go to strip clubs, and I've never, to each their own. But I've never done the nose candy stuff. I've never done like
Ugh.
weed and alcohol for me, and that's always been it. Maybe mushrooms here and there, but these guys were like still, again, this is less than 5 years ago. So these guys are already in their mid to late 30s, and doing lines of shit and drinking and all this stuff. And again, to each their own. It's just not my cup of tea. But
I guess okay. If I was gonna summarize it, in college, there at least some of that, it's like it's fucking college. It's just being a little crazy, whatever. And then, from my perspective, anyway, when I see that when people are in their mid-30s, I'm like, oh, this is just kind of like sad now.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Like I said, I'd be a hypocrite to say like, okay, once you're in your mid 30s, you shouldn't have fun, you shouldn't party, you shouldn't drink, do this and that and the other. Because I still do that here and there, right? Like very rarely, but I still get out of control sometimes. But to the degree where they do it, like, oh, it's Tuesday, or oh, let's just it's random day, let's just fucking do it. I'm gonna tell you one little it's not little. I'm gonna try to make it as concise as possible. When I lived in Bakersfield, California, one of those three fine gentlemen had to move back in with his mom to help him out, and he moved into Mojave, the city or town of Mojave, which is literally in the Mojave Desert. There's nothing around it for like maybe 45 minutes to an hour. Like it's in the drop dead middle of fucking BFE nowhere. Where I lived in Bakersfield, I was like the closest vicinity to him. And he was a quick 45-minute drive to me, because from me to LA was another 3 hours or so, 2.5 hours. So on occasion, we'd hang out. I'd go out to hang out with him. He'd come out to Bakersfield, hang out with me. On one occasion, he had planned a full weekend of shit. We went. Awesome for him, like planning all these things and like events for us to do. We went fishing one morning and did this, that, and the other. But one night he wanted to go to strip club, and I didn't. It's not like I had a lot of money, and he had like no money. So he's like, "Hey, Mondo, let's go to the strip club. Do you mind spotting me on all this stuff? I'll pay you back." I'm like, great, whatever. Like, sure. It's one of those things where, like, in my mind, I write off, like, I'm going to spend money. If I ever see it back, great. If I don't, whatever. It is what it is. We go to a strip club, and he's trying to get bottle service at one of these places. Mind you, I'm the one paying for all this, okay? I'm the one paying for this. So he's, like, trying to get bottle service, and he's talking to the bartender, trying to get a discount on the bottle service, okay? He's like, the bartender's like, I'll tell you what, I will sell you this half bottle of alcohol. So it wasn't even a full bottle of alcohol. It's okay, I'm gonna sell you this half bottle of alcohol for $50, and you get the VIP table treatment. Blah blah blah. So he's like, Armando, we should do it. You should do it. Normally VIP tables are like $150. I'm like, whatever, sure. Just to kind of have a good time with him. Strip clubs aren't my thing. Like paying money to see naked chicks. Now I can go online and see naked chicks. It's not like. I guess to some people the fantasy in their mind that they can hook up with these chicks or get a BJ or handy or whatever, like that's the excitement part. Like I'm like, it's not for me. But we're there. He proceeds to get like and I buy him like a laptop. I'm like, cool, whatever, laptop. And then he comes back. He's like, hey, dude, can I borrow some more money to get a couple more laptops? I'm like, dude, I think I let him get away with like one or two more. But again, mind me, I'm paying for all this shit. And I'm like, at a certain point, I'm like, no, dude, you're cut off. We're done. Like, we've had fun. Night's over. But
I did hook up with the stripper at a strip club once.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Awesome. Good for you.
Not on not on purpose.
Was it how did it happen?
So this is how it happened. We were in Ohio to play. It was again with there's a theme. I'm saying with the lacrosse team. And for some reason we had a recruit like travel all the way from Maryland to see us play in Ohio, and I found out he was staying in the same hotel, and I was like, man, I haven't done shit on any of these recruiting trips. Like I think they intentionally kept recruits away from me the first 3 years. Like, he's gonna wear them out. And I was like, okay, this is my time to step up. And my mom was there to visit us too, or not to visit us, to watch us play. So I went and I got the keys to her car, snatched up this recruit, and then like me, the recruit, and then like 2 other guys from the team go to a strip club in Columbus, Ohio.
Oh shit.
And like somehow like I wasn't being me. I'm like, I'm gonna like play act as like a really like cool,
Yeah.
like I'm like
A little out of character.
I'm
for
like
you.
the Ferris Bueller of the lacrosse team now. Like that's what I'm going
the
for.
Van Wilder.
Yeah, actually, that was more Van Wilder. So and somehow I managed to pull this off where there was like a stripper where I was like, hey, like I'm gonna give you $40. I don't even want a lap dance. Like whenever you get a chance, just like come out and hang out at our table. And I could really use a back massage because we just played a game and I'm sore as shit. But like whenever you get a chance. And then she just came and was like hanging out the whole time.
Nice.
And then she was like, yeah, like I'll give you a massage and then maybe I could give you a lap dance after. I was like, that's not sure. Okay.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, like we're like just hanging out. There's this little wide-eyed, I don't know if he was 16 or 17-year-old recruit.
He's looking at you like, oh my God, these guys are cool.
And I was like, I'm completely fooling, because it's like me and the 2 other weirdest guys on the team on this adventure, and we're all kind of looking at each other like, I think we're fooling him. He's buying it. He thinks we're cool. And there's just like this stripper just like hanging out, and she's just like telling me her life story, like she'd been engaged to one of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and like. And like the way he proposed to her was he took her out to like a high school football field in the middle of the night and had her run a 40-yard dash.
Yeah, yeah.
And when she like ran it, she said she ran a 4.8. I don't really know.
Fucking right.
But that's what she said, and she's like, and I ran a 4.8, and he's like, well, I guess you're breeding stock, and then proposed to her.
Wow, what a dick.
I mean, that's some Western Pennsylvania like redneck shit right there.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no, this sounds completely plausible. And then she had a kid with him, and of course, surprise, surprise, this blessed union did not last. And then she ended up, stripping at this Columbus hotel, and she's like telling me all this stuff, and I'm just like, what is happening right now?
Yeah.
And so we go back to the private area. And she's giving me a lap dance, and I'm just kind of sitting there. And then she just like starts kissing me. And I'm like,
Ooh.
and I'm like, hey, what she doing? And she's like, oh, don't worry, like the bouncer's not gonna see us. And I was like, and because at this point, I mean, the fantasy's a little bit ruined because I'm like, maybe I'm special.
Yeah.
Maybe somehow I have a magnetism that I was previously unaware of, but probably not.
Maybe she was impressed by the size of your wallet.
No, maybe I'm not the first guy that she's done this with.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And like, I don't know if I want to be hooking up with the stripper. And then I was like, fuck it, whatever. And hey, that was the second herpes bullet I dodged.
Jesus.
Woo.
Did you have anything else to add to the?
I did, but you know what? That was a fun note, and the story I was going to tell is just really sad.
Okay.
So like, well, we can skip that.
Some of the users on Reddit.
I'll tell you after.
Some of the users on Reddit user low_corner.
Guys, if you want to sign up for our Patreon that doesn't exist anymore, you can hear the story I'm going to tell Mondo off air.
Yeah, yeah. The user whatever says one's a doctor, one lives in a towable caravan.
Oh, jeez.
Nice. User Amigo del Diablo writes, worked at a bar in college and friends worked at the other bars, so I knew a lot of people who drank a lot. Most went on to be in sales or some other job where interpersonal communication skills are more valued than raw academic skills. Some do very well.
Okay.
Last one I will read. User Ripper4444 says he became a math professor, and when not teaching, he travels and has backpacked all over the world.
Oh, okay.
So it sounds like most of the
it sounds like they did okay.
Yeah, we are not so much as some of our friends.
No,
that's okay. Moving on from Reddit, the world of binge and purge, where we discuss either a TV show or a movie. Aaron, Stranger Things season 4.
Yeah. So let me just preface this. I do have this little intro.
Okay.
And I wrote it while walking over here.
Okay.
Like, getting hissed at by geese while walking through the park and everything. And maybe not the most focused intro I've ever written for one of these. So just bear with me.
Sure.
But today, yes, we are indeed reviewing Stranger Things season 4. Now, if you haven't seen Stranger Things, it probably means you're homeschooled or haven't figured out how to steal a Netflix password yet. But to recap, it's basically the Goonies meets X-Files with an oozing drizzle of Stephen King.
Yep.
And the only thing creepier than the supernatural monsters the protagonists in Hawkins, Indiana have to fight is the phrase, an oozing drizzle of Stephen King. So just a little aside, I don't know if you were aware, but like Stephen King, incredibly prolific author.
Yeah.
But there was a time where he had such a strong coke habit that he had to type with like gauze shoved up his nose because he just kept getting nosebleeds, not unlike 11, one of them. I mean, she was doing it because of her psychic powers. He was doing it because he was just snorting mounds of cocaine and then trying to type, and he would keep bleeding on his typewriter. So he was, but that's kind of, I feel like that's a cheat.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh wow, he writes so many books. Yeah, if you were snorting like a Scarface mound of cocaine, maybe you could write a book too.
Yeah.
One other thing though, and this is again a little aside, there's always been like, oh, you were homeschooled joke, but I think that joke might have to go the wayside. Like, at this point, like, would you homeschool your kids if you could?
Well, with the shootings and shit,
Yeah.
it's something worth considering. I get, well, we're not going to go too far into that, but I get scared about my niece and nephew,
For real, like, dude, if I was in high school right now, I might just be like, you know what, I'm gonna check out.
Yeah.
Fuck this place. Mom and Dad, I'm homeschooling myself.
Can we go back to COVID learning where we do everything on Zoom, please?
That'd be cool.
And
Yeah. So and the bullying is just cyberbullying instead of up front. But going back to Stranger Things, season 4 starts with the cast split up. Winona Ryder is on a side quest to break Fat Indiana Jones out of a Russian work camp.
dude, I love him. I love Todd Hopper or whatever his name
Hopper.
is. Yeah.
But come on, he is Fat Indiana Jones.
He got a little heavier, a lot more. Yeah.
A little bit. He was always a little of a thick boy.
Yeah.
And now he's a chunky boy.
Oh yeah.
11 and Will are in California contending with high school bullies, and the rest of the crew are back in Hawkins, Indiana, doing really just everything important as it pertains to the plot.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of weird, right? There's like this is a theme through all the seasons where there's sort of usually 3 parallel plot lines running.
Yeah.
And like this one, there's one plot line that has everything to do with the actual show, and then there's these 2 other sort of side plots that maybe they will be connected. We'll find out. But I do have to say, I think the most realistic part is that 11 would get bullied by high school kids. I was thinking about it. Even if they knew she had superpowers, I think they would still bully her. And this is where I get a little bit off the rails, because I was trying to imagine that, and it's just like 11 holding up her hand menacingly with a trickle of blood running down her nose, and the bullies are like, "Oh, I'm so scared. Like, what are you gonna do to us, Professor X?" Because she's like bald, like Professor X.
She's not bald, and she has long hair when she's in school.
Yeah, but this is my fantasy version of the bullying.
Okay.
And then Will Byers would be like, aside from them both having short hair follicles, Professor X is more telepathic, and she's really more telekinetic with the occasional ripping of the fabric of space-time. I mean, we haven't really defined her power set in case we need a Deus Ex Machina our way out of something in the future. And then he looks at the camera, breaking the fourth wall, and says, I mean, how could we possibly be expected to handle a school when there's a D&D monster named Vecna on the loose? And then it goes, bow, bow, chicka, chicka, and like eerie synth music.
Okay.
That's what I'm hoping happens in the second part.
No. Yeah, so you forgot to say that. You forgot to mention that the season 4 isn't the full season. Right now they've only released the first 7
Correct.
episodes, and they're releasing the next 2 episodes on July,
which are going to be like 2 hours long.
Yeah.
They just 2 movies basically.
Yeah.
July 1st actually. They're
Yeah.
coming out pretty soon. But yeah, with all the 80s movie references, have we had a Ferris Bueller reference? Or maybe with Steve.
Yeah, there's been nothing big, but little bits and pieces.
I want a Ferris Bueller fourth wall break.
Nah,
Do it.
No.
Do it.
No, don't do it.
That's for season 5 when they just get completely hacking.
Don't
corny.
do it, Duffer Brothers. Don't fucking do you dare.
There's gonna be one season that's just completely off the wall corny, because like in 80s movie sequels, usually like the first one is a little bit more serious and grounded. Like if you look at Rocky, like it was a very like gritty, portrayal of this like poor boxer, and he's living in a shitty like tiny little apartment. No one respects him. Blah blah blah. And then flash forward, like he has like a robot manservant, and it gets really corny. But so thus far, we've had four seasons. The fourth one not being completely finished. But how would you rank the seasons? What is your worst season so far?
Ew. I Can I start from the best one to the first one? The best one is going to be season 1. That's my favorite season so far. And then I would say this current season is probably my second favorite season. The second and third seasons, I forget exactly what.
For me, it's not even in close. It like the second season I thought was by far the worst.
Was it? Which one was that? I'm forgetting.
So the second season is where they introduced the new characters. There's the redhead girl and her like brother, where they're like,
okay.
wow, Steve Harrington was like way too cool and likable. Like let's just have that character again, but with none of the sort of positive qualities, and just make a complete douchebag,
asshole. Yeah.
And the girl, and then there's the random episode where Eleven goes on a side quest to Chicago, and she's like in a punk rock band / Ocean's 11 heist. We're just like, what is this? Like, what? that would have been one where if it was a weekly series where they were releasing episodes once a week, people would have fucking rioted. They're like, what is this crap? But I mean, because it was streaming, you could just kind of get through that episode and keep going. But season 2 was basically the same as season 1, with some new characters that didn't really add anything, a weird side quest. And they were like, instead of having like one of the monster, let's have like 40 of them. And then there was
Is that the one with the little dog looking things?
Yes, and Samwise Gamgee.
Oh yeah. Samwise Gamgee.
That was the second season. It was not great.
No.
But I agree with you. For me, the first season was like so new and inventive, and it didn't. They were using the tropes of all these 80 movies, but somehow they did it without really feeling cliche, and they weren't always as successful with that in the following seasons. The only negative of the first season was just like Winona Ryder being completely hysterical every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, my son Will, get Will. Like, and if you heard me yell into the mic and you're like, wow, that was really shrill and harsh. Yes, that was like every 10 seconds that Winona Ryder was on a screen in season 1.
Yeah.
But so why? Let's go back to season 4. Why do you have it as the second best season so far?
Season 1 did a very good job of bringing back a lot of nostalgic moments and events that tied back to like real 80s movies and clothing and all that stuff. And I think they moved away from that a lot in season 2 and 3. They focused on other things going on. And then in season 4, they were like, oh no, let's bring back all that kind of nostalgic feel in the characters, in the plot line, in the setting, the tape, where it takes place, like a bunch of shit that was like.
You mean Soviet Russia?
The Soviet Russia Cold War scare stuff.
That's nothing says 80s movies like Soviet Gulag.
What was that movie? Ruskies? You ever seen that movie?
No.
Ruskies? It was like a movie about like American teen, like a group of like 10 or so, 6 to 10 kids that were like, they were going to be the ones to stop the communist invasion in Russia. It was a funny movie.
I think they needed a training montage for Hopper in Soviet Russia to really just hit every trope they could have. But missed opportunity. It's all right, Duffer Brothers. You'll get them next time.
Yeah, they did a lot of that. The new characters they brought, but like the brand spanking new characters they introduced in this season, all have like, I wouldn't say flushed out backstories, but their personalities were like they just stand out. They stand out so much. They're like, oh, this guy reminds me of this. You know what I mean? There's so many cool things of the new characters.
I like the new characters.
Yeah.
Whereas in the season 2 and season 3, the only new character I liked in those 2 seasons was Maury. I think that's his name, right?
And Maury's in this season as well. Which this season now they're like, whatever Maury was, like they.
He's a main cast member now.
Yes.
Cool, because he was so good in season 3 that how could you not give him a bigger role?
For those of you that have watched previous Stranger Things, Maury's the kind of like conspiracy theorist guy that's like anti-Russia, and like the Russians are spying on us.
When he speaks Russian.
Yes. Yeah.
And he's an investigative journalist / private eye / conspiracy theorist.
A lot of comedy around his character.
Well, but I mean, here's the other thing that I really like though. There was a very sameness to the antagonist in the first 3 seasons, right? Like the first season, it was like, okay, it's just kind of a, inventive, but in some ways generic monster.
Yeah.
And then the second season, it's like, well, it's the same monster, but there's just more of them, and they're a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
And then the third season, they're like, well, we'll just make it way bigger.
Yeah.
And this, what they really did was they leaned into those sort of 80s, humanoid monsters. I mean, they're like, can we make Freddy Krueger and change him just enough where we're not going to get sued?
So you mentioned Freddy Krueger, and I didn't know this until after I read it, but apparently the guy that plays one of the psych patients, one of the survivors of Vecna's, one of the first guy to survive Vecna.
Yes.
That was played by Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger.
Oh,
I didn't know that.
That's sick.
I didn't know that until after. I was like, oh, you mentioned Freddy Krueger. Yes. So there's a lot of like Nightmare on Elm Street type of. You mentioned it too. There's like a lot of like Halloween / Nightmare on Elm Street kind of vibe going on with the villain with the hero.
Yeah. I mean, there in the 80s there were that whole kind of cast of there's Freddy Krueger and Leatherface, and what was the one with the needles in his head? Needlehead.
Pinhead from Hellraiser. Jason Voorhees, Mike Myers.
So they combined a lot of those, and then they put that sort of supernatural Stephen King drizzling over on top. Nothing ties things together like a Stephen King drizzling.
Were there characters, specific characters that you really liked this season?
I'm trying to think. Well, so are you talking about new characters?
Just new, old, whatever, just anything that developed with the characters?
So there was the new character, they called him Eddie the Freak. Or it was like Eddie Munson. I think was his
name's Eddie Munson.
But he was like so aggressively 80s, just the way he looked.
Yes.
And when I just felt like, I was like, how did they time travel this guy out of an actual 80s movie?
Without saying a whole lot, Aaron was like, there's a lot of like 80s whatever going on, like the characters. And I saw this character, and right away, he reminded me of like he kind of does look like a younger Robert Downey Jr. Playing like the side character, like what was the movie? Football movie. Anyway, there's a football movie in the 80s where Johnny Be Good, where Robert Downey Jr. plays like the backup QB to the main character, and he's just like this fucking comic like kind of wily out there 80s, and there's a lot of characters like that, like where there's like a sidekick character in the 80s movies. He played this guy the Joseph Quinn, the actor's name that plays Eddie Munson. Such a phenomenal job. By far one of my favorite new characters. Was just funny. Even when you think he's gonna take a dark turn, he finds a way to make it comedy again.
He was great. I mean, and long running, like in all the other seasons too, my favorite characters are always Dustin and Steve.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they became like an odd couple, that was just peak. One of my favorite turns that the show took. I wish there had been more of that.
They did a little bit
in
of
the season, but there was, And then as far as the sort of new characters, there was a sequence where they drove to Utah to see Dustin's girlfriend.
Yeah,
because they needed her, and it was actually kind of fun to see a little bit more of
her,
Susie, because she had a almost show stealing appearance in season 3.
Yeah, when they sing the Never Ending Story song.
I mean, that was one of the single greatest scenes to me in the whole frickin' show.
For sure.
And there were some people that didn't like it. They thought it was too corny and hackneyed. And I'm like, guys.
Oh, dude, I loved it.
If you're that cynical where you can't enjoy this, just, you have to just go to therapy, have that coal ripped out of your heart.
I think that's part of the whole Stranger Things was you're supposed to feel like giddy and enthusiastic when something like that happens. And then you have people that are like so hard, like, that's not Stranger Things canon. That doesn't make sense. Well, that character wouldn't do that. Like, shut the whole idea.
First of all, they would do it.
Yes.
And 2, I mean, that scene, I was laughing so hard when I saw it the first time that I got lightheaded. And then we get to see a little bit more of Susie. And I'm like, that's fun. I hope Susie was a fun character.
The people she lives with, I'm like, what the fuck? Like she lives like in a weird.
I was trying to figure out if they were Mormon because you kind of find out that she is really religious.
Yes.
And then I'm like, oh, she's religious. They're in Utah. I mean, Mormons are a little bit wacky, but I don't know if they're that wacky.
Yeah.
Not quite in that same way. But I enjoyed that part of the side quest.
I also really like the new kid Argyle, like the only guy that has a car, so he's like driving the kids around everywhere. Like I guess they had to introduce a way for the kids.
The stoner best friend.
The kids have to get around somehow. They're like high school freshmen. They don't have permits to drive or whatever, so they have the one buddy that has a car, and it's like a pizza van, total stoner pizza van.
Well, they really didn't have to do that because he's driving Jonathan around, and Jonathan has a car. They just make it broken down for some reason in the show.
Yeah.
And they do that because they're like, no, we need to have the stoner best friend. And you know what? Was it unnecessary? Maybe. But was it an added addition? A welcomed addition, rather.
Yeah.
For me, I thought he was fun.
Yeah. And the villain's an interesting villain, a different type of villain. The first season they had the it wasn't the Mind Flayer. The first season was
Demogorgon.
The Demogorgon, where the fucking guy's face opens up into like
the flower vagina face.
Flower vagina face guy. Season 2, like Aaron mentioned earlier, was like all the little doggy.
Yeah, they were instead of a Demogorgon, and they were demo dogs.
Demo dogs. Season 3 was the Mind Flayer.
Yeah, and that was a little different because they did do initially, if you remember that season, they did some sort of like body snatcher possession thing, where it was like possessing people. But then they just do like the giant monster at the end, which felt very similar to the first 2 seasons. Just they're like, oh, we made it bigger.
And then this one they have, like Aaron said, like a humanoid villain where he's like he reminds me a lot of traits of like a Freddy Krueger. Like he comes to you,
he talks to them.
Yeah,
Mondo, what is your worst fear?
Yeah, and it's just
Mondo, what is your worst fear?
I don't have one.
If he was gonna infiltrate your mind, Mondo, what would you see?
What would I see? I don't know, a bunch of fat, gross, old people shitting. I don't know.
You're at a fraternity stag, except all the girls are just like 70 with like saggy boobs and they're 40 pounds overweight.
So I'm getting laid,
and they're like, come on, Mondo, we're gonna give you Roadhead. And you know what? You'd thwart him because you'd be like, you know what? I'm on board for this. Let's go.
Yeah.
Roadhead, we're about to find out if it's better with dentures.
But yeah, season 4, part 1.
Mondo, do you see how I tied that back to the earlier thing?
I do, but it
worked.
Poorly,
it worked completely.
Okay.
It was seamless, and no one felt that was a weird and clunky transition. Continue.
So that was it for the first half, part 1 of Stranger Things season 4. Great show. I think last week we talked about how we were going to discuss upcoming shows for the summer, but because
we'll do another.
Yeah, we're running
episode.
a little longer than usual here. But do you have anything else you want to add?
Nah, we covered all the extracurriculars up top, so
yeah,
I'm good.
Thank you guys for listening and watching us. If you're watching us on the YouTubes or the Twitch, we appreciate you guys. We'll talk to you guys in the week.